Everybody. Welcome to another class on Web Yeshiva. I'm David Sedley. We are tonight continuing the halachot of Birkat Cohanim, which is almost the end of the Amidah. And tonight I want to talk about a bit more about what the Cohanim do, what the Levi'im should do, what the Shaliach Tzibbur does, what the congregation does, and then a few other things to wrap up at the end. So let's see where we go. So we kind of covered a bit of this last week, but the Cohanim, when they give their blessing, we talked about how they put their hands. They also make a bracha. So the Gemara in Sota says, "My mevarech." What blessing do the Cohanim recite? Amar Rav Zera, Amar Rav Chizda, Asher Kedushan b'kedusha toshel Aaron v'tzifan lavrech et hamo yisho b'ahava, who commanded us in the sanctity of Aaron to bless his people Israel with love. And we talked last week about the importance of love and why love connects it to Aharon. So fine, I'll move straight on. And the importance of saying this blessing seems obvious, but there's this cute Gemara in Megillah where they ask a series of long-lived rabbis in what merit they lived so long. Shalu Talmidavet Rabbi Elazar ben Shammua. So Rabbi Elazar ben Shammua's students asked him, "B'mer harachti yamim, in what merit did you live such a long life?" Amar lehem, he said to them, "Mimai lo asiti kapantri lebeit knesset." In my whole life, I never took a shortcut, never used a synagogue as a shortcut. V'lo pasati al rashei am kadosh. I never walked over the tables or the benches to get to my seat, stepped over the heads of other people. And I never did Birkat Cohanim without first reciting a bracha. Right. So Rashi says at the bottom here, Lo nasati kapai leduchan leBirkat Cohanim. Right, when he gave Birkat Cohanim because he was a Cohen. Lefisha Cohanim shrechin levarech, because the Cohanim have to make this bracha. Brachata Hashem lekedim melech haolam asher kedushan b'kedusha. Sorry, asher kedushan b'kedusha toshel Aharon v'seches sota. So. Not the mitzvah of blessing itself of the bracha, but it's reciting. Sorry, he didn't attribute his long life to giving Birkat Cohanim, but rather to always reciting the blessing before giving Birkat Cohanim, which I think is interesting. So anyway, if you're a Cohen and you recite this blessing, keep in mind that it is good for long life. So. There's other things the Cohen has to say as well. Ki ake kare my amar. So when the Cohen heads up to say this, before he says the bracha, what does he say? Yiratzon milfanecha Hashem Elokeinu shtei bracha zosh tzivitanu levrechet Amcha Israel. Right? May it be your will, God, that this blessing that you commanded us to bless, lo yeh ba michshol va'avon, that there should be no stumbling block or sin in it. And then when he's finished saying Birkat Cohanim, what does he say after he's turned back around? So Rav Chizda taught Rav Ukva the following. He should say, Ribono shel Olam, Master of the universe, Asinu ma shegazarta aleinu, we have done what you commanded us to do. So now you do what you promised us. Hashgiv mem on kashecha min hashamayim. Look down from heaven, your holy heaven, and can't remember now. Hashgiv mem on kashecha min hashamayim. And I can't remember the rest of the verse. Oh, bless your people Israel. It says in English. So that's the Cohanim have a blessing. Not blessing. A prayer to say before they make the blessing, that they make before they say the blessing, and then after they've done the whole blessing, they make another prayer. So we're talking about Birkat Cohanim in general. Amar Rav Chizda ein Cohanim r'shayin lakuf k'shir etzba'atom ad shichzru p'neihem min hatzibur. The Cohanim stretch their hands out, right? Do the hand thing. They may not fold their hands up until they've turned back around after finishing the blessing. In other words, they have their hands out from before the blessing begins till it finishes. Amar Rav Zera, Rav Chizda, and here it's connected to the relationship, the interaction between the Kohanim and the Shaliach Tzibbur. So the custom is when there's more than one Cohen, in the Sephardi communities, it's the Shaliach Tzibbur, and in Ashkenazi communities, somebody else says Cohanim to give them the cue to say the bracha. The person who says Cohanim may not say Cohanim until the congregation has finished saying Amen from the previous blessing. And the Kohanim may not start their blessing until the person has finished saying Kohanim. And the people may not answer Amen until the Kohanim have finished saying their bracha. And the Kohanim may not start the next bracha, next word, until the congregation has finished saying Amen. And that's also true now that we have the Shaliach Tzibbur giving the prompt, giving the cue word by word to the Kohanim. He may not say his next word until the Kohanim have finished saying their word, and the Kohanim may not say their word till he's finished. There's got to be discrete gaps between each of these pieces of the puzzle, because each person has an important role to play. It's not that the Shaliach Tzibbur is like the offstage guy giving the cues. He's part of saying the bracha. Is him saying the word first is part of the bracha, and then the Kohanim repeat it, and the congregation answering Amen. The whole thing works together, and if they're interrupting each other and talking over each other, then it's not working as it is supposed to. The Kohanim may not turn back around after they're finished until the Shaliach Tzibbur begins the next bracha of Sim Shalom. And they can't go back to their seats until the Shaliach Tzibbur has finished the bracha of Sim Shalom. And actually, if there's a Kaddish following that, like on Shabbat, Shachrit and Musaf, they may not go back until after the Kaddish. But on a weekday, when it's followed by Tachanan, for example, they may not leave their place until the Shaliach Tzibbur has finished saying Sim Shalom. And now, I don't know if you ever look at the Kohanim when they're giving the bracha. If you're a Cohen, I don't know whether you know this, but there are certain words where the Kohanim, right? Kohanim are facing the congregation, which means they are facing west, because the ark is in the east. They're now facing the congregation in the west. So on certain words, and all the words that end with cha, plus the last word, they turn their hands right and left, to the north and south and north. So when they say Yevarechecha, V'yishmerecha, Elecha, V'choneka, Elecha, Lacha, and Shalom, when they're saying, may God give you, bless you, keep you, guard you, show favor to you, all the you words, the Kohanim move their hands from right to the right and then to the left and then back to the middle again, to spread that bracha around to everybody. Sorry, I'm going too quickly because I just ran home. Slow me down, ask me some questions. Now, there is a custom that the Levi'im...
Rabbi, when you say to the right or the left, is that to the right of the congregation or their right?
Their right. The Kohanim turn to their right, which, if the shul is positioned facing east, then that will be to the south. So yeah, Kohanim with their backs to the ark turn to their right, and then to their left, and then back to the middle. Thank you, very good question. So the custom is that the Levi'im wash the hands of the Kohanim. And, there's one reason for that, and then a second reason as well. So the main reason that the Levi'im wash the hands back up. In the temple, the Levi'im did not wash the hands of the Kohanim. When the Kohanim would do their temple sacrifices, do their work, each Kohen would wash his own hands and feet. He'd hold his right foot in his right hand and wash that. Then he'd hold his right foot in his left hand and wash that. The Levi'im were busy singing and playing music and opening the gates and doing whatever they were doing, but they did not wash the hands of the Kohanim. But nowadays, that we don't have the temple and the Kohanim aren't washing their hands and feet, there is a custom that the Levi'im wash the hands of the Kohanim. And the Zohar is the main, only source, right? It's not mentioned in the Talmud anywhere. The Zohar is the source for the Levi'im washing the hands of the Kohanim. So I'll practice my Aramaic. Tana, it's taught. Cohen debai lefarsi yadoi. A Cohen who wants to spread his hands to do the Birkat Cohanim, By Yitosef Kedusha al Kedusha Dile. He needs some extra holiness added to his holiness. He has to wash his hands, sanctify his hands, purify his hands through someone who is holy. Man yade de kadisha, who has got the holy hands. Who is the holy person to make his hands holy? Da Levi. This is a Levi. Debai kahan li'tal kedusha demaya miyadai. That a Cohen has to wash his hands to make them holy from the water of the holy water of the Levi. Tichtiv, because it says in the Torah, "V'kidashte et haLevim," you shall sanctify the Levi'im. Ha'inun kedisha, they have holiness. Uktiv b'hu b'Levim, and it says about the Levi'im, gam et achicha matei Levi, also your brothers, the tribe of Levi. So, I guess the Levi'im have a certain level of holiness, and the Cohanim have a higher level of holiness. But for the Cohanim to reach their level of holiness, they need the Levi'im to wash their hands for them. Maybe this is an antidote to Korach, who was a Levi, complaining that Aharon got all the good stuff and made him challenge Moshe. So the Levi'im are supposed to be working hand in hand, washing the hands of the Kohanim. So there's not all that many halachot that we learn from the Zohar, but this is one of them. The Zohar is the source for the Levi'im washing the hands of the Kohanim. Now, this presents a problem. Okay, fine. Look, if the Aruch HaShulchan, right, the Zohar is attributed to Shimon Bar Yochai, and is certainly well known by the medieval rabbis, some of them. The Aruch HaShulchan is the 19th century, and he first quotes the Zohar as the reason, and then he gives another reason. V'odev shalomah lezikaron beit mikdashenu. Another reason is that it's a reminder of the temple. Sha'az hiu Levi'im mishamshim b'shmirat hamikdash, right? Because when the temple stood, the Levi'im were on guard duty. They'd be keeping, making sure the temple ran smoothly. Tachat memshelat Kohanim, and they were under the authority of the Kohanim. So now also they wash the Kohanim's hands, means they're under their authority, because really the Levi'im don't have very much to do. They get the second aliyah, but they don't have anything as a reminder of their status as a Levi. Right? The Kohanim, apart from Birkat Cohanim, the Kohanim have all sorts of restrictions on what they can do, where they can go, and who they can marry, which remind them they are Kohanim. But the Levi'im don't really have any restrictions. So he says they do it to make them kind of remember that they're Levi'im. So the Shulchan Aruch says, even though the Kohanim washed their hands in the morning when they woke up, before they prayed, they have to wash their hands again before Birkat Cohanim until the rest. And the Levi should pour water on the hands of the Kohanim. And here's something that I don't think I've ever seen, certainly not common. The Levi should wash his own hands first to purify himself, so that then when he washes the hands of the Kohanim, he's adding to their purity. And it says in brackets, Lo nagu ha-Levim litol yadehem tchila. The custom is, though, that the Levi'im don't wash their hands first. Rak samchol and tilatan shachrit, they rely on the fact they wash their hands in the morning. Now, often there's also a practical problem. There's not enough time, depending on how many Kohanim there are and how far away the water is. There's often not time or not water for the Levi'im to also wash their hands. But it will make sense. The Levi'im wash their hands, then they wash the Kohanim's hands. But that's not really what we do. And the Mishnah adds in another possibility. There's no Levi around. Levi yotzak mayim. Kshe'ein Levi, if there's no Levi in shul, yotzak b'chor peta rechem, then a firstborn, the firstborn of his mother, he should pour the water on the hands of the Kohanim, to gam ken kadosh k'tzat, because he also has some level of holiness, even though, right, originally in Egypt, the firstborn were going to be the priests, or the Levi'im, and then after the sin of the golden calf, they lost that right, and the Levi'im took on the role of the Levi'im. But the Bechor still has some kind of holiness. If a Bechor, firstborn, needs Pidyon Bechor, needs to be redeemed when he's born, to show that he has the Kedusha, he's transferring that to the Levi'im. So he should pour their hands. V'im ein gam Bechor, but if there's no Levi and no Bechor, tov she'atil HaKohen b'atzmo, it's better the Cohen washes his own hands, mishiatzik Yisrael edo. That's better than just having a regular Yisrael pour water on his hands. And there's no prohibition on the Cohen washing his own hands. I have a Chevrusa who was a firstborn, and he's always very happy when he goes to shul and there's no Levi'im there, and he gets to wash the Kohanim's hands. He's one of the few people I know, one of the few Bechorot I know who does wash Kohanim's hands and very much enjoys doing it. It's a good day for him if there's no Levi'im around. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. So those are your options for Levi. If there's no Levi, Bechor, if there's no Bechor, then the Kohen washes his own hands. Now, the Shaliach Tzibbur, as I said before, his role is not just to be a prompt for the Kohanim, although that's very important because, believe me, it's very easy to forget the words when you're under the talus with your hands out and waiting for Amen. So he does a very important role giving the words, but also he's part of the bracha. Right? He's, as we know, when there's no Kohanim present or in Chutz La'aretz, the Shaliach Tzibbur says Birkat Cohanim. Interesting. Rabbi Lau, former Chief Rabbi Lau, I assume you mean? So a Bechor should try to find a minyan without a Levi once he has to have the... Okay, I did not know that. Thank you, Michael. I will tell Kenny. So the Shaliach Tzibbur should not be shy or embarrassed about saying the bracha. He shouldn't whisper it. He should... he's saying the blessing, that's part of the blessing as well. But we're worried in the days before there were Siddurim, we're worried that the Shaliach Tzibbur might get confused. So, the person who's the Shaliach Tzibbur, who's prompting the Kohanim with the words, should not answer Amen after their blessing, because he might get confused about where he's up to, which, trust me, happens even with Siddurim, that sometimes they skip a line. Anyway, Ve'im ein sham Cohen elahu, if the Shaliach Tzibbur is the Cohen, Lo yisad kapav, so the Gemara says he should not do Birkat Cohanim. Because he'll get confused. He won't be able to remember where he's up to. He'll lose track of the words. But if he's certain that he can both do Birkat Cohanim and come back to being Shaliach Tzibbur without losing his place, Rashai, then he may do Birkat Cohanim. And there's logistical problems if you're in a shul where the Shaliach Tzibbur daven's in the middle, in the bima, and the Cohen has to be at the front. And apart from logistical problems, very often in Israel you'll have a minyan. If the Shaliach Tzibbur is a Cohen, he'll do Birkat Cohanim. Rabbi, jumping back to a lot of Hilchot Birkat Cohanim is at the end of Sota. The Mishnah there says these are the things that have to be said that may only be said in Hebrew, and one of them is Birkat Cohanim. So then it goes on to a whole page of halachot of Birkat Cohanim. If there are two or more Kohanim, then somebody says Kohanim as their prompt to start with the blessing. But if there's only one Cohen, then you don't say Cohen, because Kohanim is Kohanim is part of the bracha, that's part of the pasuk rather, the verse. There's no verse of Cohen, and so you can't say the plural because there's only one, so you don't say anything. Shnema emor lahem. Right, say to them the shnaim if there's two or more, but not, that's a plural. Amar Rav Chisda naktin kohen kor kohanim ve'ein Yisrael kor kohanim. Shnei amor lahem. So Rav Chisda says that it should be a Cohen who calls out Kohanim and not Yisrael, because there's amor lahem amira mishilahem day, that the person who does the saying should be one of them. But the Hilchot Kavdei to Abaya, the late Hilchot Kavdei to Rav Chisda, the halach is like Abaya, that you only say Kohanim if there's two or more. Halach is not like Rav Chisda, that in fact Yisrael calls out Kohanim and not a Cohen. What is the Shaliach Tzibbur supposed to do while the Cohanim are doing Birkat Cohanim? So I said last time they shouldn't turn their backs on the Kohanim, and they should just stay in their place and concentrate. So the Shulchan Aruch says, B'shah shekohanim mevarachin ha'am, when the Kohanim are giving their bracha, Lo yabitu v'lo yasichu datam. The people should not. So that translators glanced around. I think it means they shouldn't stare at the Kohanim, but they also shouldn't ignore them or think about something else. They should look down at the ground, as they would be if they were standing, if they were praying the Amidah. And the people have kavanah for the bracha that they're receiving, because the Kohanim can only give a bracha if there are people to be blessed. They should be facing towards the Kohanim, but they shouldn't be staring at the Kohanim. And the Ramah adds, the Kohanim should not look at their own hands. Therefore, Therefore, his custom is that the Kohanim put the talit over their heads, but put their hands out of the talit so they don't look at their own hands. And other places have a custom that the Kohanim cover their hands with the talit so that the people won't look at their hands. In the temple times, the Shekhinah was on the hands of the Kohanim, the divine presence. Nowadays it's not, but as a reminder of that, we don't want to look at the Kohanim. So every shul I've been to, I believe, although I guess I wouldn't know because I wouldn't be looking, but I think every shul I've been to, the Kohanim cover their hands with their talit, but there certainly were places in the not distant past that the Kohanim's hands were outside of their talit, and the people would cover their faces with a talit. Sefer Haflah, Pinchas Levi Horowitz, 18th century. I put at the bottom there the beginning of this Wikipedia entry. He wrote a book called Haflah, so he's known as the Hafla'ah. And so he says about this, Pashut, it seems to be obvious just as the Kohanim have a positive mitzvah to bless the people, so too, the people have a positive mitzvah to be blessed by the Kohanim. So he thinks that's obvious to him. And afterwards, I found this explicitly in Sefer Charedim, Shekatav, Ken, that he wrote this, that there's a positive mitzvah for the Israelites, the non-Cohanim, to receive the blessing. So they're part of the bracha in the same way as the Kohanim are. Now, the reason the Kohanim and the people should not look at their hands is from this Gemara Chagiga. Rosh Yehuda bar Rabbi Nachmani, so Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Nachmani, who served as the disseminator is a good word, right? When Reish Lakish would give a shiur, he would say it quietly, and Rabbi Yehuda would stand and say it loudly to everybody and elaborate on what he'd said. And he says, anyone who looks at three things, his eyes will become dim. Bekeshet, if someone looks at a rainbow, or benasi, if he looks at a nasi, at the prince, or bekohanim, if he looks at the kohanim when they're doing Birkat Cohanim. Right. Bekeshet Tichtiv, it says about the rainbow, Kemarea Kesha Sheyeh Be'anan Be'yom HaGeshem, Hu Mareh Demut Kvod Hashem. Like a rainbow in the sky on a rainy day, that is similar to the appearance of God. So looking at a rainbow is like looking at God, and that makes you go blind. Benasi Tichtiv Menatat Mehodcha Alav, the prince, the nasi, God says he'll put some of his glory on him. So looking at the prince, like looking at God. If somebody looked at the hands of the Kohanim, or looked at the Kohanim when the temple was standing, they would stand on the Duchan in the Beit HaMikdash, and they would bless the people with God's real name, his explicit name. And that's talking about when they may not look at the Kohanim, because again, the divine presence is there. Nowadays, there's no divine presence, and so it's a custom not to look at the Kohanim. I don't want to commit to. If I was an optician, I would use this in my advertising, but since I'm not, don't look at the Kohanim's hands, but there is no divine presence there. Now, I was sure this was above these somewhere. I really think there's a Gemara and Brachot that I couldn't find, but anyway, I'm going to quote the Yerushalmi and Gittin for this, which again I mentioned last week. It says, Ro'acha b'ritalchem barachia b'shem Rav Simlai. So, right, these rabbis said, Ir shekula kohanim, If there's a city which is all Cohanim, everybody does Birkat Cohanim. So there's no people left to be blessed. Everyone's on the Duchen doing Birkat Cohanim. So who are they blessing? They're blessing the people who aren't in shul, the people in the north, the people in the south. So who answers Amen after their bracha? Hanashim v'aktanim, women and children. Tanya, because children have to be over 13 to do Birkat Cohanim, as we discussed last week. Tanya Bar Binyamin, Am ha'omer achrei Kohanim, people who are in shul. So even though Birkat Cohanim covers everybody outside, wherever they are, north and south, but if people are inside the shul and they're standing behind the Kohanim, meaning closer to the Aron Kodesh, behind the Kohanim, Eina b'chlal bracha, they're not included in the blessing. Hamdim l'fnei Kohanim, if they're standing in front of the Kohanim, then they are included. Amar Rav Chia bar Ava, afilu choma shebarzel eina mafseket. The people in front of the Kohanim, even an iron wall won't separate them from the bracha. What about people who are standing parallel to the Kohanim in the same latitude? Nishmaini min hadal, we can derive it from here. Nitkaven la'azod lefanav v'izal la'acharav, v'la'acharav v'izal lefanav v'azal psula. The Kohanim, when they have to sprinkle the blood on the altar, if they meant to sprinkle it forwards and it went backwards, they meant to sprinkle backwards and went forwards, that's no good. But lefanav v'izal tzadim hazerek shaf, he meant to sprinkle forward and he went sideways, that's kosher. So that implies that sides are like front, right? So that implies that people who stand on the sides of the Kohanim are also included in the bracha. Now, obviously, or not obviously, but I'll say it anyway, this refers to people who are intentionally standing behind the Kohanim or intentionally taking themselves out of the bracha because they don't want to move their seat, because they don't, I don't know, they've got better things to do. But if somebody is in the middle of davening the Shemoneh Esrei, or somebody is can't move from where he's standing because there's somebody davening in front of him and he can't walk, and therefore he's forced to be behind the Kohanim through no fault of his own, then he would be included in the bracha, just like the people outside in the fields in the north and the south are included in the bracha. I just did, okay, fine. And this is what the Shulchan Aruch says. Am shachrei Kohanim einam b'chlal bracha. People behind the Kohanim are not included in the bracha. Aval milifneihem u'b'tzadeihem, but in front of them or to the sides, afilu mechitz shabarzel mafseket, even an iron wall won't separate them from the bracha. V'lachareihem, and behind the Kohanim nami, imhem anusim, if they're forced, they've got no alternative but to be. They could go on am shebasadot, like for example the people in the fields working at the front of the shul, behind the Kohanim. Sheim trudim b'melachtam, they're busy with their work. V'enem yochalim lavo, and they can't come to shul. Hem b'chlal bracha, they are included in the bracha. It's the only people not included are people who intentionally stand behind the Kohanim. Now, what do the people say when the Kohanim are saying Birkat Cohanim? So we go back to our Gemara and Sota, and it says Benila di Yom Kippur my Amar Neila. Yom Kippur, which is the classic time of Birkat Cohanim, what do the people say? Amar Mazuch v'Amar Leib Manita. So either Mazuch said, or it's a Braita that said, Hinei ki ken yivarach gever yireh Hashem. This is how you somebody who fears God will be blessed. Yivarech Hashem et Zion, oreh tov Yerushalayim kol yemei chayecha. So that he says after the first bracha, and the second one he says, you should be blessed from Zion and see good in Jerusalem all the days of your life. And the third one he says you see your children and blessing for your children, grandchildren, and all of Israel. So when does he say these verses? Rav Yosef Amar Ben Kol Bracha Ubracha. Rav Yosef says, like I just explained, after each of the three blessings of the Kohanim, he says one verse. Rav Shesh Amar Behazkirat Hashem. Rav Shesh says no. He says it while the Kohanim are saying God's name. In the middle of this, they're saying it to themselves quietly, but they're saying it over the Kohanim. So Pliki bar Rav Mari Rav Zvid is a machloket between Rav Mari and Rav Zvid. Chadama psuka lekabel psuka v'chadama akol psuka amalo lekolhei. So one of them says that they say one verse at a time after each of the Kohanim's blessings. The other one says they say all three verses 3 times each time. But Rav Chia bar Abba says this is only in the temple. When the Kohanim said God's divine name, that's when they had these verses to say. But if you say this, anyone who says this outside the temple is making a mistake. Amar Rav Chanina bar Papa Teda de Mikdash Nami Lami Bai Lememrinho. Rav Chanina goes even further. He says, even in the temple, you shouldn't say these verses. Why? Do you ever find a case of a servant who's being blessed and he's not paying attention? He's saying something else instead while he's getting, I don't know, King Charles goes to knight somebody. Instead of concentrating, that person starts saying some psukim or doing something else to distract himself. So when the Kohanim, according to Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, don't say anything when the Kohanim are doing their blessing. Just sit quietly and concentrate on receiving the blessing. Rav Acha disagrees and says, even outside the temple, you do have to say these verses. Do you ever have a servant who receives a blessing and he doesn't say masbir panim? They translators does not brighten, but he kind of says thank you, or he shows favor back. So you receive a blessing, you say a blessing back. Rav Bahu says, I used to say these verses initially, but when I saw the Rav Abba from Akko, now I don't know anything about Rav Abba from Akko, so I can't give you any background, but when I saw that he wasn't saying these verses, I also didn't say them. And that's the halacha, that you shouldn't say anything when the Kohanim are saying Birkat Cohanim. Now, that's a problem for some people because the Siddur, particularly the Art Scroll Siddur, has pages and pages of things to say when the Kohanim are doing Birkat Cohanim. So, before I talk about that, there's one exception where you may speak during Birkat Cohanim. And that's if you have a bad dream. And I don't have time to go into this, but the cure for a bad dream is to say, there's a couple of different ways of dealing with bad dreams. Sometimes people fast if they have a bad dream. Sometimes they collect a bait and do hatavat chalom. But one custom is when someone has a bad dream, they say certain verses during Birkat Cohanim, which the Gemara in Brachot talks about. So these 3 rabbis were sitting talking to each other. They said, let's each of us say one halacha that the other 2 don't know. So one of them said, if someone has a dream and they don't know what the dream was, meaning they think it's a bad dream, but they don't remember it, they should stand up in front of the Kohanim when they do Birkat Cohanim, and they should say the following. And this is going to take 2 pages. Rabbanu Shalom, Master of the Universe, Ani Shelcha v'chalamotai Shelcha, I belong to you, my dreams belong to you. Chalom chalamti ve'eni yodea mahu, I dreamt a dream, and I don't know what it is. Bein shechalamti ani la'atzmi, bein shechalamti li lechaverai, whether I dreamt about myself or I dreamt about somebody else. Bein shechalamti al achreim, or I dreamt about, my friend or others. Im tovim heim chazkem v'amtzem kechalamotav shel Yosef. If it was a good dream, make it true. Make it come good, true, like the dreams of Yosef. V'im tzrichim refuah, if the dream needs healing, it's not a good dream. Refaim kemamara ayidei Moshe Rabbeinu, heal them like the bitter waters of Mara that became sweet when Moshe put a staff in them. And like Miriam was healed from her leprosy. Like Chizkiah was healed from his illness. Elisha, or like the waters of Jericho that were sweetened by Elisha. Just as you turned Bilam's curse into a blessing, so too make all my dreams come into good dreams. And he should recite this and finish at the same time that everyone else says Amen, so that they're answering Amen to his prayer as well. And if he doesn't have time to say that, or he can't remember it all, he should just say the following: Adir b'marom, God in heaven, Shachem b'gvora, again, resting in power, whatever. Atah shalom shimcha shalom, you are peace and your name is peace. May you put peace on us. So the Gemara in Brachot, the Gemara in Sota says that you shouldn't say anything when the Cohanim are giving a bracha, and the Gemara in Brachot says that if you had a bad dream, you should say something when the Cohanim are giving a bracha. That seems like a contradiction. Luckily, we have Tosfot, who both points out this contradiction and answers it. So he begins by quoting the Gemara Kolam Gevole in El To'er. Pirishri, so the Re explains, Afa Gav Damrin Perek Ro'er, even though the Gemara Brachot says, Haiman de Chazik Halma, someone who had a bad dream, right? Why is he allowed to speak? Dehata Mishum Sakana Hetiro. That is an emergency situation. If a person has a bad dream, that could be dangerous. So if it's Pekuach Nefesh, if it's a case of danger, they're allowed to speak during Birkat Cohanim. Shema Chalom Mesukanu, maybe the dream is dangerous. Shetzrich Refuah, and it needs this healing, and he's got to say these verses to heal himself, heal the dream. Because the power dreams are so serious that even on Shabbat, if someone has a bad dream, they may fast on Shabbat. So we see that curing a bad dream overrides normal rules, because it's forbidden normally to fast on Shabbat. So that's why the only time you're allowed to speak during Birkat Cohanim is if you've had a dream and you don't know what it was and you want to do Hatavat Chalom. And Pirush Rabbeinu Chananel says, Hani Kolo Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, Rabbi Abau, Hilchat Ninhu. All the statements of these three rabbis are halacha, meaning that people should not speak during Birkat Cohanim. They should not say any verses. They should not say anything. They should stand quietly and concentrate on the blessing. Now, the problem is, for example, the art scroll, Siddur or Machzor, you have three words from the Kohanim, Yivrech Hashem Yishmerecha, in the bold letters here, and you've got all this small print and a whole Rabbanu Shalom afterwards, and all these extra words. And if you didn't know better, you might think you were supposed to say those words. And really, you're not. Certainly not supposed to say them on a weekday or on a Shabbat. I'm saying Melvin. If someone has a bad dream, there is a halacha they should fast. I don't know what you mean by a minor fast. It's a fast from daytime to nighttime. So yes. But in general, people don't fast for dreams nowadays. It's probably better to just say the dreams have no meaning. It's a machloket Rav and Shmuel in the Gemara Brachot in the last chapter there, and Shmuel is of the opinion that dreams have no meaning. And even though we have Gemaras like the one we just looked at, where dreams do seem to have meaning, if you don't believe in the power of dreams, then they won't have any effect on you. So yes, there are some people who fast, and halacha says that you may, or you should. But nowadays, most people wouldn't fast for dreams, and I wouldn't recommend starting. Just assume that dreams are based on indigestion, what you had for dinner. Anyway, so the art scroll and other siddurim have lots of words that look as though you're supposed to say them during Birkat Cohanim. And the answer is, you're not. And art scroll knows that, and that's why art scroll only put them there on festivals, but they didn't really explain okay, Alvin, well, that's powerful. I don't know what the right response is to that, but bad. No, it sounds like something interesting is happening, and I'm sure that the bad dreams have no power and will not turn into anything bad. So the reason they put all that in there is because of what the Ramah says here. The Shulchan Aruch says when the Kohanim are making their blessing, don't say anything, stay quiet. The Ramah adds, nowadays that the Kohanim have this long sing-song while they're doing the Birkat Cohanim, usually before the last word of each bracha, there's a long tune. So the custom is for people to say verses during that song. or Kamoshe Baal Siman Zayin, Linya Barachu Achyoter Tov Shelol Amram. However, says the Ramah, it's better not to say anything at all. So our scroll put those small print verses in and prayers in there only for festivals and only in a place where the Cohanim are singing. And the reason the Cohanim sing is so that there's time for people to say these verses, but it would be better if people didn't say those verses. In places where the Cohanim don't sing, definitely don't say them. Many places, even if the Cohanim sing, they don't sing on Shabbat, and the reason is because those verses are prayers asking for things. We don't ask for anything on Shabbat. So that's why the Cohanim don't sing on Shabbat. So if you have a choice, don't say them, even though they're printed in the Siddur. But if you do, only on festivals that are in a place where the Cohanim are singing. And that's what the Shulchan Aruch says, right? That the Cohanim sing, and there's the not the long thing, but the short thing that we said earlier, to make the Cohanim's prayer work, right? Which is I can't make this bigger, can I? But not this whole. I don't think he may say this whole long thing, but a shorter piece. And again, only when the Cohanim are singing at the end of their bracha. Now, I don't really mean how do you know he's a Cohen. I guess my question is, how certain do you have to be that you're a Cohen in order to do Birkat Cohanim? Do you have to be able to trace your lineage back to Aaron, a Cohen, to do Birkat Cohanim? Do you have to know for sure that your great-great-grandparents served in the temple as Cohanim? Or if you think you're a Cohen, can you do Birkat Cohanim? If you suddenly discover, what kind of proof do you need to do Birkat Cohanim? Now, I guess I should have put this. Maybe I'll. No, I'm going to say after this that someone who's not a Cohen may not do Birkat Cohanim. So what about someone who thinks they're a Cohen? So Ibayad, they ask the following questions: if somebody does Birkat Cohanim, does that then can we use that as evidence that they're a Cohen and therefore they can eat truma, for example? Right? And the Gemara answers, Rav Chizra Avina Charama Malin v'Charama Ein Malin. It's a machloket. One rabbi says yes, one rabbi says no. Meaning, how certain is the Cohen when he does Birkat Cohanim that he's really a Cohen? That's a machloket. Amar le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Rava Maula Lov Nesir Kohen Liyuchsin. So Rav Nachman asked the same question of Rava. Amar le Plugted Rav Chizra Rav Avina. It's a machloket. Hilchat Amai. What is the halacha? Right. Amar le Ana Matnita Dana. I know there's a Breita which says, a Mishnah that teaches, no, a Breita, Breita, says, Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer Gdola Chazaka Shneimah Mipnei HaKohanim B'nei Chavya B'nei HaKotz B'nei Barzilai Asher Lakach Mimlot Barzilai Agiladi Isha V'Ikra Al Shemam. This is a verse in Ezra, and it says the children of the Kohanim, who are, right, children of blah, 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 Ela bakshu kitvam hamityachasim v'lo nimtzau v'galu min hakona. So they were trying to prove their connection, their genealogy, and they couldn't find it, and therefore they were kicked out of being Kohanim. Vayome hitrashata lahem, and Trashata said to them, it was Ezra, Asher lo yochlu mikodesh hakodeshim ad amud kohen leoram v'tumam. They can't have the sacrifices until they've been validated as kohanim by the Urim v'Tumim. Amar lahem harayatem b'chezkatchem, meaning, sorry, it wasn't Ezra, it was Nehemiah. He says you have a status of being kohanim, right? So you retain your same status. When you were in Bavel, right, we're talking about the Jews who came back from Bavel. When you were in Bavel, you didn't eat sacrifices, right? Because there were no sacrifices. So you would eat kodshe gvul, you would eat truma. Afkan kodshe gvul. So here too in Israel you can eat truma, but you can't eat sacrifices, right? So and similarly, if you would have done Birkat Cohanim in Bavel, you can do Birkat Cohanim in Israel. So if you would think that you can elevate somebody from, if they do Birkat Cohanim, they can they're definitely a Cohen, then Hani Kevin Pasiadayo Atlaskune, these Cohanim, if they are doing Birkat Cohanim, and so you would think, right, they did that in Chutzlaretz, you would think then that they are going to be full Cohanim, and that's not the case. So therefore, the halacha is, someone thinks they're a Cohen, that's good enough to do Birkat Cohanim without needing a certificate proving they're a Cohen. Non-Cohanim, this is really for my friend Lepi Haller, who once decided he was in the Great Synagogue and he wanted to see what the view was like from the platform where the Cohanim did Birkat Cohanim. He's not a Cohen. So he decided he wanted to go up with the Cohanim and just see what it looked like. So he didn't say the bracha, he just stood there and mumbled under his breath and no one knew who he was, and that's fine. But if he would have said the bracha, would he have done something wrong? Like, is there a prohibition in giving someone a blessing? Amar Rav Yossi, mimayla avada divrei chaverai. So Rav Yossi says, again, this is a different Gemara, but his students asked him how he merited to live so long. And he said he never went against the words of his friends. Yodani batzmi sheni kohen. I know that I'm not a Cohen. However, im amrim li chavroi alel duchan. If my friends say, please go and give us Birkat Cohanim, I would do Birkat Cohanim. So Rabbi Yossi seems to say that a non-Cohen may do Birkat Cohanim. However, the Shulchan Aruch, based on other Gemaras we're not going to go into now, says Ein lezali saka pafilo ima Cohanim. Right, a non-Cohen may not do Birkat Cohanim even with other Cohanim. Fine, I'm going to skip the rest of it. So if you're not a Cohen, stay down. If you are a Cohen, even if you can't prove it from Jenny that you're a Cohen, you should still do Birkat Cohanim. And now I'm going to run out of time, but this is the question you've all been waiting for. Why don't most communities outside Israel, at least most Ashkenazi communities outside Israel, why don't they do Birkat Cohanim? And why do most communities in Israel do Birkat Cohanim? So, Sefer Chinuch says very simply, Mitzvat Birkat Cohanim b'chol yom. There's a mitzvah for Kohanim to do the bracha every day. Shnistavua Kohanim shivrachu Yisrael b'chol yom. Right, there's a commandment, as we saw, to bless people every day. Shneimar kol tivrachu b'nei Yisrael emor lehem. V'nohegen mitzvah zo. Right, Sefer Chinuch says for each mitzvah where it applies, when it applies, and who it applies to. Nohegen mitzvah zo b'kol makom. This mitzvah applies in every place. Doesn't matter if you're in Israel or outside of Israel. B'chol zman, and it applies any time, whether there's a temple standing or not a temple standing. B'kohanim, and to all Kohanim. Ki aleim mitzvah zo levarach Yisrael, because they've got the mitzvah. Shachrit, Musaf, and Ne'ilah chayvin levarachem. They've got a commandment, an obligation to do Birkat Cohanim and Shachrit, Musaf, and at Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur and fast days, which we don't really do nowadays. Which is why, parenthetically, when Mincha is davened late on a fast day, the Kohanim do Birkat Cohanim, but I'm not going to get into that. So Sefer Chinuch says simply, yes, you should be doing Birkat Cohanim in Israel and outside of Israel. There shouldn't be any distinction between them. And he's right. There's no source in the Talmud that makes any distinction. I was going to say not in the Rishonim. That might not be true, but no major source in the Rishonim either says that you should not do Birkat Cohanim outside Israel. But the Beit Yosef, so is the Agro they Rishonim, late Rishonim, fine. Beit Yosef, which is written by Rav Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, he says, Michtav ha'agor shenish'al me'ari mulin, lama en kohanim asin kapem b'chol yom. So, Maharil, the Agor asked Maharil, the Agor said that Maharil was asked, why the Kohanim don't do Birkat Cohanim every day outside of Israel? Or maybe even inside Israel. Shul mitzvah say. It's a positive mitzvah. Why wouldn't you do it? Be'eshiv, and he says, the Kohanim are accustomed to go to the mikveh before they do Birkat Cohanim. Now, I don't know the source. This is a custom the Kohanim made up for themselves. Again, there's no source in the Talmud for this. And it's really cold in Poland in winter. They can't go to the mikveh every day. Therefore, the custom is they do Birkat Cohanim only on Yom Tov. When they go to the mikveh anyway before Yom Tov, and also they've got to work. They haven't got time to do Birkat Cohanim every day, so therefore they stop doing Birkat Cohanim. Now, none of those are particularly good reasons. I mean, also, sorry, if someone has to go and work, they haven't got time, sure, I hear that. But for that to become a custom that nobody outside of Israel, no Ashkenazim, some Sephardi shuls do Birkat Cohanim outside Israel, but majority of Jews outside Israel don't do Birkat Cohanim because it was too cold to go to the mikveh, which they didn't need to do anyway, or because they've got to work. That seems like strange. Right? And so he ends up, Yashar Kocham Shel Bnei Yisrael V'Kol Malchot Mitzrayim. The Beit Yosef ends with saying, Kol HaKavod, well done to the people of Israel and the people of Egypt. Shnosem Kameh B'Chol Yom, they do Birkat Cohanim every day. Ve'inam Tov L'Im Etzei, and they don't go to the mikveh, and they avoid the whole problem. And the Shulchan Aruch, Rabbi Yosef Karo lived in Tzfat in the 16th century. Darkei Moshe has a different reason. Partly because they're too busy working. But also, I should read the last line here, Ve'enim Shreim B'Simcha, they're not happy because they're outside Israel. Life is tough. If they have to miss work, they're not happy, and therefore they don't. And you have to be happy with your Birkat Cohanim, so they don't do it when it's a work day. And on Shabbat they also don't. Shulchan Aruch Rav takes it further. Whoops, that's the wrong punctuation. This is the first Lubavitch Rebbe, who wasn't from Lubavitch and wasn't yet the first, but when he was around. Anyway, Shnei Zalman of Liadi, Na'agu b'chol on Elu, and I should have taken that footnote. The custom in all our countries, in Russia, Shein Nesiat Kapayim Ela B'Yom Tov. We only do Birkat Cohanim on Yom Tov, Mishum Sha'az Shurim B'Simchat Yom Tov, because people are happy. V'tov lev hu yivarech. Somebody who is happy should bless. Ma'ashenkim b'shar yamim, afil b'shabbatot, hem trudim, al mechiatam, v'al bit melachtam. All the other days, even Shabbat, they're too busy, too preoccupied with their livelihoods, with missing out on work. Einam shrim b'simcha. They're not happy. V'afilu b'yom tov, ein osim kapayim el b'fil musaf. Even on festivals, they don't do Birkat Cohanim. Musaf. They come out of shul, they're very, very happy. That's when they do Birkat Cohanim. Now, again, not a great reason, with all due respect, not a great reason. Oel Yaakov ben Aaron Sasportas, was a contemporary of, or it was around at the time of Shabtai Tzvi, the false Messiah, and he was very strongly opposed to Shabtai Tzvi. He strongly said he was not the Messiah. And he seems to he says, when Shabtai Tzvi showed up, some communities in Amsterdam wanted to do more, do better mitzvah. They started doing Birkat Cohanim every day. And then when Shabtai Tzvi turned out to be a false Messiah, they wrote a letter to him and said, what do? Do we stop doing Birkat Cohanim? Do we keep doing Birkat? We're doing the right thing, but we had the wrong motivation. Should we just do it on Shabbat, not every day? So there seems to be, I'm not so interested in his answer, but there's something messianic about Birkat Cohanim, and perhaps part of the opposition to doing Birkat Cohanim outside of Israel is this trying to damp down messianism. And conversely, the reason to do it in Israel perhaps is kind of messianic. Anyway, so there's two stories about the Vilna Gaon and his student Chaim Volozhin. Both of them wanted to do Birkat Cohanim. They decided the halacha is Kohanim should do Birkat Cohanim every day. The Vilna Gaon decided, tomorrow I'm going to tell my shul to do Birkat Cohanim. And that night he was arrested and locked up in jail for a week, I think. And so he understood from that it wasn't the right time to do Birkat Cohanim. Chaim Volozhin, you can read the story yourself. The sources are on the website. Chaim Volozhin, who was a student, decided he's going to do Birkat Cohanim in his shul. So he said to everyone, tomorrow morning we're going to do Birkat Cohanim. And that night the shul burned down. So he decided it wasn't a good time to do Birkat Cohanim either. However, the Ashkenazi traditions in Jerusalem and large parts of Eretz Yisrael were established by the students of the Vilna Gaon who made Aliyah, and Petach Tikva and Rishon LeZion. Vilna Gaon students came to Israel and they instituted doing Birkat Cohanim every day. So that's the main reason that in Israel Kohanim do Birkat Cohanim every day. However, in Tveria, and other places up north, the Cohanim do not do Birkat Cohanim because they're different traditions. So it's not full Israel versus outside Israel. But again, in theory, there's no real reason why Cohanim shouldn't do Birkat Cohanim, but there's a very long tradition that they don't. I've run out of time. Just very quickly, we obviously say Birkat Cohanim when we give a blessing to our children, which is some people do that every Friday night, some people do it Erev Yom Kippur. Right, we say, as we read in last week's parsha, Yisimcha Elokim K'Ephraim Menashe to boys, make you like Ephraim Menashe. To girls, we say Yisimech Elokim K'Sarif K'Racha V'Leah, and then we say Birkat Kohanim Yorecha Hashem Yishmerecha. And that's not only Kohanim; everybody, men and women, can say Birkat Kohanim. In that case, we use Birkat Kohanim, sometimes Kohanim, to show that they're Kohanim, put symbol of hands on their gravestones. That's interesting. Bob Dylan used Birkat Kohanim, referred to Birkat Kohanim in one of his songs. And I was going to end with the scene in Deep Impact, a movie where Morgan Freeman says he's the president of the world's about to be destroyed by a comet, by a meteor, and he gives Birkat Kohanim to try and comfort the people. But I haven't got time, so I will stop. And just really quickly, the Gemara in Brachot says there's a prohibition of showing favoritism. So how can God show favoritism to Israel? Because it says, Yisashem panav elecha v'choneka, right? God will show you favor, shows favor to you. So how can God do that? And the Gemara answers that the Jews go beyond the letter of the law. They do more than they're supposed to do. So God can't help himself but show favor to us. So Birkat Kohanim is a way of expressing God's over and above favoritism to the Jewish people. And may we all have a blessed, happy week, and see you same time next week. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Rabbi.